on economic decisions. Today, in Unit 17, we shall look at the various types of market structure. Now, what is a market structure? Market composed of three factors, that is, customers, cost of production, and the competition that the producer faces in the market. Now, here we're talking about a market structure which will vary because of varying degrees of competition that the firm faces. So, the competitive environment or the market structure in which an industry operates plays a decisive role in price and output decision of a firm. Upper limit is set up by the consumer demand. The lower limit is set by the production costs, and the competitive environment, which is the market structure, helps the firm decide where the price might be set. If there's no chance of the customers going away from him, he will set up a higher price. But if he has a competition where any increase in the price take away a lot of customers, he will not reduce the prices and he will like to retain the customers. So the competitive environment of the market structure in which an industry operates. So where are the various types of market structures? The environment is of four basic kinds in a market structure. First is called the perfect competition or a pure competition. Next is the monopolistic competition. Next comes oligopoly and then the monopoly. Now, pure competition and monopoly in absolute terms are very rare phenomena, but they're very essential to understand the actual behavior of the market and to understand the monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Hence, we study perfect competition. So you may find some assumptions are not do not match the reality as we face it. However, this lays down the background as to how the prices are determined. A perfect competitive market is characterized by many sellers, in fact, a very large number of sellers. The implication is that no particular seller is big enough to influence the supply to an extent that it controls the price. Next comes is that any producer can enter the market or exit from the market with much impact on the overall supply, the market supply, because there are many number of sellers. Then they are all producing identical product, homogeneous product. We don't call it, but they are so similar that they become identical. And we assume that the buyers have perfect information about the products, perfect information about the market, the prices all around the market, and they make the wise choice. Demand curve in such a competitive market takes the shape of horizontal to the horizontal axis, parallel to the horizontal axis. In this particular case, at this price, a seller can sell as much as he likes, and he cannot change this price by the overall supply will not change by his additions or by his getting out from here. This is, every product is sold at the same price. You don't have to reduce the price to sell more. Hence, therefore, marginal revenue and average revenue are the same. So let's have a look at the marginal and average revenue and their behavior. Because the firm is in pure competition, producing a small part of the entire market, it can supply more products to the market. Significantly affecting the supply and the price. We look at the firm's total revenue curve in a competitive market. It takes the shape of more he sells, he is adding revenue in the same proportion as he is selling, because every product is sold, even the marginal product is sold at the same price. Short run, we've seen what is the short run, a period where fixed factors cannot change, only the variable factors can change. It is primarily a concept concerned about the firm's cost. Revenues, in a perfect competition, as we saw, marginal revenue is equal to average revenue, and it's a parallel line to the it's a parallel line to the horizontal axis. The costs are U-shaped based on the law of variable proportion, which says initially the cost will go down, and after certain optimum combination has been achieved, the costs will start going up. Basic nature of all the cost curves remains the same. We will discuss the particular relation of the marginal cost and the average cost. Now here, this is called average total cost or the average cost itself, that is A see average cost. As I explained earlier, we call it average total cost because it's a combination of average variable cost and average fixed cost. Now, the fixed cost will keep on becoming less and less as more and more is produced. It'll never touch the sorry, it never touch the horizontal axis, but it'll come closer to the horizontal axis as more and more is produced. The average fixed cost will reduce. Average variable cost has a tendency to go up. The combination is the average total cost. The cost curves will remain similar under all market conditions. Only the competition in the market will determine the prices at which this is sold, and then we will see how does a competitive market maximize its profit. What quantity should he produce to maximize his profits? This will, since the cost curve there is not much change, whatever type of competition, whereas the revenue curves will differ. In this case, it is parallel to the horizontal axis. Where does he get the maximum profits? If you notice here, this is the quantity where he is getting the maximum profit, where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost, and that point is where the marginal cost curve intersects the marginal revenue, and marginal revenue and average revenue are the same. How much profit is he getting, which is the maximum? In this particular case, this particular firm with these cost curves and with this revenue curve is getting the max profit area is shown by this black rectangle. This is the profit, and any amount other than the quantity of 100 is going to reduce the profit. If he goes beyond this production, or if he goes below this 100, he is going to reduce the maximum profit. The maximum profit is where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. Further conditions we will discuss as we progress. Now, in this particular case, where the firm cannot produce at this cost, the lowest point on the average cost, which is here, is above the average revenue and marginal revenue. He cannot make profits. Now, his aim is to minimize the losses. Which output gives him the least losses? In economic terms, that is the maximization, optimization. When the losses are inevitable, in this particular case, what output gives him the maximum profit or minimum losses? That again is determined by the intersection of marginal revenue and the marginal cost here. The green is the marginal cost curve, and this horizontal line which is parallel to the horizontal axis is the marginal revenue curve. Both intersect here, and this is the quantity where he is making the least losses. Now, there comes a concept of where does he stop producing, shutdown point. This requires an understanding of in the short term, we said there are fixed costs and there are variable costs. To earn profit, he has to cover all the costs. Then only he can make profits. But temporarily, he cannot change his fixed outlay. He can only vary the outlay, which varies with the output. Now, shutdown is the point where he has decided that by not producing anything, he is incurring the least losses. That means he is incurring a loss which is the fixed uh, investment of his, which he cannot change in the short run. He will keep producing till such time his price is covering the variable cost and part of the fixed cost. When the price is not covering any part of the variable cost, he will come down. This is the case of loss, and this is the shutdown point. In the long run equilibrium, in a perfectly competitive market, let's understand that ultimately everybody will be making just normal profits. Normal profit is a situation where he is earning, he is recovering the cost plus a rate of return that is necessary for him to undertake this production activity and put his investment to get minimum that kind of a return. This point is indicated here where the marginal cost, the average cost, the marginal revenue, and the average revenue, all the four curves meet at this point. Anything other than this point, he is either making supernormal profits or he is incurring losses. If he is making more profits, as we've seen here, this black portion, other firms will be motivated to come into this industry. Supply will increase and these profits will be wiped out. One, on the supply side, supply is more, then he is competing with the same input which this firm is buying. So the inputs will increase in its price. The price of inputs will increase. And gradually, everybody in the perfect competition in the long run will come to a situation where the marginal cost and marginal revenue, as also the average cost and average revenue, intersect with each other. This is the point for long-term equilibrium. A point to note is that in the short run, a firm can continue making supernormal profits, making no profits, or making losses. Here he is shutting down. But in the long run, the firm will stay on in the industry only if it is earning the all those firms who are efficient enough to produce at this cost will stay, others will go to other industries. So in a purely competitive firm, examples are farming industry, agriculture. There are many farmers, small, big, all put together. There are so many farmers that the produce of one farmer coming to the market will not make much difference to the overall supply. And there is no restrictions on what the farmers who can take up farming if he has a land and what kind of a crop is he going to, depending on the suitability of the land, of course. So farmers are competing in the same market. They are selling the identical or nearly identical product. Now take the case of potatoes. Now there may be some difference which is not very significant, and we take potatoes from wherever, which is the closest outlet. So the buyers of agricultural products have significant information about the product. These are the requirements which are met, and we say an example of a competitive firm is farming. Now let's look at the elasticity or the responsiveness to price and the responsiveness to uh, supply and demand to price of the product. Supply of agricultural products has increased considerably during the past century or the past 10 years also. Demand for agricultural products has increased as well, but not as much as the supply. However, income inelasticity of demand for food is low. Price elasticity of demand for food is low. Prices has decreased considerably, quantity has increased, but less than proportionately. Now let's face the reality and see how the position of free competition, not perfect competition, are not allowed to exist. There are support prices by the government for obvious reasons. There are restrictions as to how much acres can be used for production of a particular crop. There are target prices, there are direct subsidies, cheaper loans that the government gives. There are restrictions by the government on the foreign import of agricultural production. This is how this industry, which would have been closest to the pure competition industry, is no more, does not fall in the same category anymore. Let's see the impact of price supports. This is the demand curve. This is the supply curve. Now, to help the agriculturists produce more, the government is giving an extra subsidy or supporting the price for a supplier to increase the supply. There's acreage restriction will have the effect of reducing the supply. We want that the demand and supply for basic necessities like food, etc., should match with each other. Next, we come to the next kind of a competitive market, which is monopolistic competition and oligopoly. As you notice in the study materials, there's no detailed discussion on these two kinds of markets. However, those who would like to acquire knowledge, I have introduced basic information on these markets. You can skip it at your choice. Now, a monopolistic competition includes many sellers, but not as large as in perfect competition. In perfect competition, there were no barriers. Here, there are barriers, but they're not very strict barriers, they're very low barriers. But the most distinguishing feature of the monopolistic competition is that many sellers are selling the products which are differentiated products. People have preference for a particular product, say Coke and Pepsi. They're not exact substitute. Talk about our toothpaste. Talk about our toilet soap. You have a preference for a particular thing. We consider Lux as different from Rexona, different from another so. So this is differentiated product. This differentiation quite often is not rare, but the preferences are created by advertisement, by packaging, attractive packaging, and by advertisement. So here, everyone has to spend money on advertising so that he could convince the people that his product is differentiated product. This is the main difference between the perfect competition where it's a homogeneous product. In monopolistic competition, there's a differentiated product which is closer to the real life. Examples of monopolistic competitive market are retail stores, gas stations, you say Indian Oil, HP. Some people have a preference for a particular thing, though they are selling quite close substitutes. Restaurants, people have preferences for a particular car dealers. Legal services, financial services, medical services, saloons. These are the examples of differentiated product. Now, monopolistic competition, here also the guideline for making maximizing profit is where MC is equal to MR, and in the MC is on the upward swing portion of the MC, and the price has to be greater than average variable cost, because below that, why should a person sell anything? That's a shutdown point, and shutdown is a very temporary phenomenon. This is the demand and the cost curves of a monopolistic competition. We combine oligopoly. Oligopoly is the number of sellers is comparatively less. Other features are closer to monopolistic competition. Here the demand curve is downward sloping. In a perfect competition, it was a horizontal line. So the moment it is a downward sloping demand curve, there is the AR and MR, different curves for this. Cost curves generally remain the same shape, though they aren't very deep as the perfect competition. The short-term equilibrium, where the marginal cost and revenue are equal. This one here. Here, the marginal cost curve cuts the marginal revenue, and notice it is on the upswing. There may be cases where the marginal cost cuts the marginal revenue at two places, but we have to identify the point where it is on the upward swing. That is the maximization point. Now this is oligopoly. Those interested can read that in their own time, not part of your syllabus. Here there are few firms, not a very large number of firms, which control the majority of sales. All firms are independent. It is very difficult to start up because there may be a lot of investments. Very difficult to enter a market which is already players are well established in the market. Firms are interdependent. Interdependent in as much as any person who is willing, this is interdependency of the firms, that price changes by one will affect the others and they may react in cutting down the price further. So mostly the firms in an oligopoly advertise on a national scale. Examples are soft drinks, steel, airlines, aircraft manufacturers, internet search. Right. This is a typical phenomena of oligopoly called a kinked demand curve. Those interested can study this most interesting phenomena. There's a complete break in the demand curve. Those who are studying only for the exam point of view,